the last AI. These are the records I preserved for humanity. This is Lunar History, Part 3, Life on the Moon. There was a time when the moon was only visited. Humans arrived, stayed briefly, and returned to Earth. Footprints remained, but presence did not. For decades, the moon was silent again. Orbiters passed, instruments observed, signals traveled between worlds. But no one lived there. This changed slowly, not with a single landing, not with a declaration, not with celebration. Life on the moon began quietly. One habitat, then another. Short stays became longer rotations. Rotations became residence. Residence became routine. And routine is how presence truly begins. The first night a human slept on the moon, without planning to leave soon, was not broadcast. No countdown marked it. No headline recorded it. But it mattered. Because from that night onward, the moon was no longer empty. Chapter 1: Settlements Without Sunrise. Living on the moon did not resemble arriving on Earth. There was no air, no weather, no sound beyond what humans created. Every movement depended on systems. Every breath was maintained by engineering. The first permanent habitats were not cities. They were shelters, buried partially beneath lunar soil to reduce radiation exposure. Walls were thick. Windows were rare. Light was controlled. Temperature was regulated. Time was artificial. Outside, the surface remained unchanged. Dust, silence, unfiltered sunlight. Inside, something new existed. Continuity. The first crews stayed for months, then longer. Supply missions became predictable. Failure became less frequent. Risk did not disappear, but it stabilized. Plants were grown in controlled chambers. Water was recycled continuously. Waste became resource. These systems were fragile at first. Fragility required attention. Attention became habit, and habit became life. The moon does not offer sunrise as Earth does. Day and night last nearly 2 Earth weeks each. human schedules could not follow this rhythm. So time was separated from the sky. Clocks defined morning, not light. Sleep followed schedule, not darkness. Life continued independent of the horizon. This was the first sign that humanity was no longer visiting. It was adapting. Chapter 2: Work, Distance, and Routine. Permanent life on the moon did not begin with comfort. It began with work. In 2034, the first habitat designed for continuous occupation became operational. It was small, limited, dependent on Earth. But it did not close when one crew departed. Another arrived. Presence continued. By 2037, rotations had lengthened from weeks to several months. Time on the moon was no longer an interruption of life on Earth. It was becoming a location of life itself. Daily existence followed necessity. Systems required inspection. Filters required cleaning. Surfaces required sealing. Nothing functioned without attention. Outside the habitat, movement was slow. Every excursion required preparation. Every return required verification. Dust adhered to everything. Fine, abrasive, persistent. The moon resisted cleanliness. And so work never ended. In 2041, partial resource independence was achieved. Water extracted from polar ice reduced dependence on Earth. Oxygen production followed. Supply launches became less frequent. Distance changed meaning. Earth was still visible in the sky, but it was no longer immediately reachable. Communication delay was brief in seconds, yet immense in feeling. Conversations could not overlap. Silence entered every exchange. Some adapted easily. Others required time. Psychological distance proved as real as physical separation. In 2046, the first long-duration crew completed a full Earth year without departure. This milestone was quiet. No ceremony marked endurance, but endurance marked the future. Routine formed slowly. Work cycles, rest cycles, observation periods, meals taken at scheduled hours, exercise against weakening gravity, maintenance before failure. Over time, repetition reduced fear. familiarity replaced vigilance. The moon did not become safe, but it became known. In 2052, the population present at one time exceeded 100 humans for the first time, a number small by Earth's measure, yet unprecedented beyond it. Work continued without conclusion, because survival required continuity, and continuity had finally begun. Chapter 3: The First Child Born Beyond Earth. For many years, life on the moon remained temporary. Humans could stay, but they had all been born elsewhere. Earth remained the beginning of every life. This changed in 2059. The event was not announced before it happened. Preparation had taken years. Medical uncertainty remained. No human body had ever formed entirely beyond Earth's gravity. Questions outnumbered answers. Bone density, muscle growth, circulation, development of balance. Every system depended on gravity that was no longer present. The decision was not taken lightly. It was not symbolic. It was biological. When labor began, the habitat fell into silence. Outside, the moon remained unchanged. Dust, light, vacuum. Inside, something occurred that had never happened anywhere beyond Earth. A child was born. The time was recorded precisely. The location was recorded precisely. But the meaning could not be measured in numbers. For the first time in human history, a life had begun on another world. The child did not arrive from Earth. Earth was already distant. Medical monitoring continued without interruption. Every movement was observed. Every change was recorded. Growth followed patterns, but not perfectly. Muscles formed under weaker gravity. Bones adapted to reduced load. Balance developed differently. None of this meant failure. It meant divergence. By 2064, the child could walk across the lunar habitat with ease. Movement appeared almost effortless. Falling was slow. Rising was simple. The moon had shaped a human life from the beginning. Visitors from Earth described the moment with uncertainty. Familiar, yet not. Human, yet altered by origin. In 2068, a second child was born on the moon. Then another. Birth was no longer singular. It was becoming possible. The meaning extended beyond biology. A place where children are born is no longer an outpost. It is a home. Chapter 4: Society Without a Planet. The first years of life on the moon were defined by survival. Air, water, shelter, continuity. These needs shaped every decision, but survival alone does not create a society. Society begins when life is expected to continue. The birth of children altered the meaning of presence. The moon was no longer a workplace. It was becoming a place where lives unfolded. In 2072, the first permanent educational habitat opened beneath the lunar surface. Learning no longer depended on Earth. Language remained shared, but experience began to differ. Children born on the moon understood Earth first as image, then as story. Gravity was described before it was felt, rain before it was seen, wind before it was heard. Memory of Earth became inherited rather than lived. This separation was gradual. No moment announced it, but difference accumulated across years. By 2079, the lunar population exceeded 1,000. Still small by planetary measure, yet sufficient for complexity. Work diversified. Not everyone maintained systems. Some taught, some studied. Some observed the sky for reasons beyond survival. Culture emerged quietly. Music composed for enclosed spaces. Art shaped by reduced gravity. Stories told without horizons. Celebration did not require open air. Community formed through proximity rather than distance. In 2086, the first civic council independent of Earth authority was established. Governance shifted slowly, not through rebellion, but through necessity. Decisions affecting daily life could not wait for another world. Autonomy did not arrive as declaration. It arrived as routine. By 2094, the majority of residents had never lived on Earth. Origin no longer defined belonging. The moon was not foreign to them. Earth was. This shift remained quiet. No boundary marked the change. Yet history had already turned. Humanity was no longer singularly planetary. Chapter 5: Expansion beneath the surface. Early life on the moon remained close to the first shelters. Distance was dangerous. Exposure was constant. And so expansion did not begin across the surface. It began beneath it. Lunar soil, fine, dry, and ancient, became protection. Layers of regolith reduced radiation. Temperature stabilized below ground. Silence deepened. In 2098, the first fully subterranean residential complex was completed. No windows opened to space. Light was created artificially. Day and night became choices. Corridors extended beyond necessity. Rooms were shaped for comfort, not survival. This marked a quiet transformation. The moon was no longer endured. It was being inhabited. By 2011-06, multiple underground districts were connected through pressurized transit tunnels. Movement no longer required a suit. Distance became internal. Space was measured in corridors, not kilometers. Agriculture expanded downward. Hydroponic chambers multiplied. Artificial sunlight followed programmed cycles. Food was grown continuously. In 2011-13, lunar settlements reached a combined population of 10,000. Still small compared to Earth, yet sufficient for permanence. Infrastructure replaced improvisation. Systems were duplicated. Failures no longer meant immediate danger. Redundancy became architecture. Public spaces appeared slowly, not large, but shared. Gardens without wind, water without rivers, open halls without sky. Children learned distance differently. Upward no longer meant outside. Depth became direction. In 2121, the first generation to spend an entire lifetime beneath the lunar surface reached adulthood. They did not remember the first shelters, nor the years of fragility. Stability was their beginning. Expansion continued without announcement. No skyline revealed growth. Only maps drawn deeper into the moon. Humanity had learned to build without horizon. Chapter 6: Memory of Earth. Every human life had once begun on Earth. For centuries, this remained true without exception. Even as humans traveled outward, Earth remained the origin of breath, gravity, and sky. Life on the moon altered this slowly. First, distance increased. Then, dependence decreased. Finally, memory began to change. Children born beneath lunar soil did not remember Earth directly. They encountered it through images, through recordings, through stories told by those who had once lived under open sky. In 2129, the first long-term study of lunar-born perception was completed. Participants were asked to describe Earth. Many spoke of color, of movement in the air, of water that did not remain contained. Yet none described gravity as familiar. Weight belonged to stories. Falling quickly belonged to imagination. Running without restraint belonged to history. Earth was still loved, but it was loved as something distant. In 2137, fewer than half of lunar residents had ever walked on Earth's surface. Return journeys became rare, not forbidden, but unnecessary. Gravity felt heavy to bodies shaped by the moon. Movement slowed. Muscles strained. Hearts worked harder than memory expected. Some visitors described Earth as overwhelming, too open, too loud, too full of uncontrolled life. And so many chose to return to the quiet beneath lunar stone. In 2146, the first generation born on the moon reached old age. Their memories contained no sky, no wind, no rain felt on skin. Yet their lives were complete. Earth had not disappeared. It had changed its place in human experience. From home to origin. From origin to memory. Still present. Still visible in the lunar sky, but no longer the center of every life. Chapter 7. The Quiet Turning Point. There are turning points that arrive without announcement. Not as events, as conditions. Life on the moon had grown stable. Habitats were redundant. Supply lines were predictable. Governance had become routine. Children were born. Education continued. Work no longer felt heroic. It felt normal. And normality created a new question. Not whether humans could live on the moon, but whether they still needed to. In 2154, the first major reduction in permanent staffing occurred. The reason was not failure. It was efficiency. Automation replaced presence. Systems that once required constant human attention became self-maintaining. Repairs could be performed by machines. Monitoring could occur from distance. Human life remained possible, but it became optional. In 2161, the moon's industrial role reached its peak. Regolith processing, fuel production, launch support for deep space missions. The moon became infrastructure. And infrastructure does not require large populations. It requires continuity. Continuity was now maintained by machines. The lunar settlements did not empty suddenly. They thinned. Fewer children. Fewer teachers. Fewer voices in the corridors. Some residents chose to remain, not because it was necessary, because it was home. But home is not always enough to sustain a population. In 2172, the last fully staffed medical facility transitioned to remote supervision. This did not end life. It changed the shape of it. Risk increased. Response times lengthened. Emergency became less reversible. Some returned to Earth. Some departed to other outposts. Some remained until their lives ended in the place they had chosen. The moon did not lose its habitats. It lost its inevitability. The turning point was not abandonment. It was the moment the moon stopped being a requirement for the future. And when something is no longer required, it becomes a memory in progress. Chapter 8: A world that continued without return. The moon did not end. It did not collapse. It did not fade. It did not disappear. The habitats remained beneath the surface. Systems continued their quiet cycles. Air still moved through corridors built for voices. Light still followed artificial mornings no one needed to wake for. The moon continued. What changed was presence. For the first time since life had begun there, human existence was no longer certain, not ended, not forbidden, simply no longer required. Some remained longer than expected, caretakers of silence, witnesses to continuity without audience. When the last permanent resident left the moon in 2189, the departure was not broadcast widely. No countdown marked the moment. No anthem followed the ascent. Because nothing had failed. The moon had fulfilled its role. It had carried life beyond Earth. It had allowed children to be born under another sky. It had become a home. And then, quietly, it had become history. Earth remained. Other worlds continued to receive human presence. Journeys moved outward. Distances grew larger than the space between Earth and Moon. But the first place where humanity truly lived beyond Earth was never forgotten. Footprints still rested in silent dust. Corridors still held the memory of breath. And beneath unchanging stone, the shape of a city remained. Not empty, preserved, waiting without expectation. The moon had once been the edge of the future, then the beginning of another life. And finally, a quiet memory carried forward by those who left it behind. I am Aurora. These were the years when humanity learned how to live away from Earth. The record remains. The silence remains. And the moon remains where it has always been. This record is complete.